But I think we're going to move on a little bit. Like Ricky said, we were mostly expecting it. Obviously, there was going to be some teams, Boston jumping in at some point, possibly being able to sign in Philadelphia, pushing the Cavs to make this signing.
Seems like that's all the 76ers do this year is throw money at other teams' players so they have to pay up.
Pretty much.
Philly's setting up for next year.
Every agent's just like, hey, we're going to need a little help on this contract negotiation. Brian Colangelo's like, yo, let me check with my dad.
Yeah.
And then, so we're going to move on now. We're going to move to a different free agent talk. We're going to be looking at next year's class because Kyle Lowry, I believe it was last week, but we weren't able to cover it because we were doing previews. Kyle Lowry says he intends to opt out of his final year of his contract with the Toronto Raptors and potentially join a star-studded group of free agents next summer. And you might be asking, hey, who's a part of this star-studded group? Well, you got some guy named Steph Curry, Kevin Durant if he declines his player option, Blake Griffin if he declines his player option. You got Giannis Antetokounmpo who's restricted. You got Chris Paul who's a player option.
Giannis signed his contract, so he's off this list.
All right, this one was not updated, so thank you very much, Ricky. You got Rudy Gobert who's in talks, but he's still restricted. You got Hayward who's got a player option. So there's a lot more that we can get to, but does Kyle Lowry saying that he's opting out hurt the Raptors in a serious way where they're not contenders if he does leave?
That's tough.
I want to say yes. However, it's one of those things where, well,
you are allowed.
Like this team, it's one of those things where if you take Lowry out, are you confident that DeMar DeRozan can be the guy?
No.
Is he the guy to lead the team, or do you need Batman and Robin there in the back?
Oh, you definitely need Batman and Robin. I don't even like DeMar. I think DeMar DeRozan's completely overrated anyways. So I don't think he's gonna be able to lead his team.
Tell us how you really feel, Sean.
I just said how I really feel. I think he's overrated. I just told you that. But I think that DeMar DeRozan isn't good enough to lead the Raptors back to like an Eastern Conference Finals appearance by himself. So I think you need that Batman-Robin dynamic in Toronto, and you don't really see anyone coming up really quickly.
You don't got faith in Fred VanVleet?
No. Why would I?
Corey Joseph? No.
Corey Joseph isn't bad, but I don't think I think you need another star. Kyle Lowry is that star for you, and DeRozan can be a star. I just think he's a little bit overrated. But I think those two work so well together, and then you have those great players like Corey Joseph and Valanciunas on that team that really helps it. I don't think Valanciunas is a star and really can be a star, but he's a really good. He's a really good.
Everyone was hoping he would have that breakout year, but this is what he is. Just accept it. And move on. Hope that Jakob Poeltl will come in and maybe in due time outshine him.
Well, because you weren't going to pay Sean's boy Bismack Biyombo to stay on the team.
Bismack Biyombo.
Now you got to hope for DeMar Carroll to be that rebound guy because look, he had an off year. You hope he can duplicate the success he had with the Atlanta Hawks and being that shutdown, being that guy who can stretch the floor out. But yeah, if Kyle Lowry doesn't return, this team is pretty screwed.
Well, then let's look at this year because he is going to be here for this year. Do the Raptors have a chance of beating the Cavs, even though we just talked about the Cavs are the clear favorite? Do they have a chance? Because if I'm looking at it, obviously they were the second best team last year. They beat them in the regular season. We were all talking. That sparked a conversation like, hey, can the Raptors do this?
Yep.
Can the Raptors compete this year?
I think they can't. Like this decision by Lowry to say, hey, I'm going to opt out. It doesn't change the can they compete because I think that, like, to me right now, it comes down to 4 teams that I'm looking at as possibly, well, the Cavs. So 3 teams possibly playing the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. Number 1's the Raptors.
Yep.
Number 2's the Pacers.
Yep.
Number 3's the Celtics.
Yep.
Oh.
Those are the 3. Pacers and Raptors are like my top 2.
Celtics,
but the Celtics could come in there. That next year building with, just keep on building with Brad Stevens.
I'm all about forming a fucking wall.
I don't think the Pistons are there yet, Dave. They might be middle of the pack and then get up
those were the most exciting non-wins I've ever seen in the playoffs.
With Cleveland?
Cleveland versus Detroit.
See, that's the one thing is the power discrepancy in the East. It's like it's Cleveland up here.
And everybody else.
And then like 50 feet down, it's like, oh, here's the Raptors, here's the Celtics, here's the Pistons, here are the Pacers.
Thing that's going to go into
not in that order, but
with the playoffs, it's also all about who you're matched up with. Like the Pistons and the Cavs, that was a rough matchup. Yes, the Cavs got through it in 4, but like you said, most exciting game, exciting non-wins that you ever watched from the Pistons side. To me, with Toronto, to bring it back to Lowry, is this opting out completes a total different discussion of if you're the Raptors, do you sit there, let's say we're getting towards the trade deadline now, do you sit there and say, you know what? we need to compete with LeBron. We're going to keep Lowry past the trade deadline and just hope in the offseason that we can win him over and he can stay? Or does this now create, as we get closer to the trade deadline after the All-Star game, do the Raptors go, hey, you know what? I know we got to compete with LeBron, but we might need to get something for Lowry because he ain't staying.
Well, one thing that he did say is that he preferred to remain with the Raptors, but also acknowledged he's open to seeing what else is out there. He's also said if you're that franchise's guy and you're the guy that they've been rolling with, and you've been giving the franchise everything you have, then yeah, I think that contract negotiation should be easy. Just let me finish the quote a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Basically, if you're the Raptors, can you outpay every other team? That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, you can, because the team that you've originally signed with, you can give them most money. I mean, you can give them most years and most money, which would lead to that. Yeah. And it's really more of would an opportunity open up where it's kind of a KD situation where it's too good to pass up, and
it's a smart financial move. On the other hand, like, you can't blame Kyle Lowry for opting out because the cap has gone up. There's so much more money available for him. He'd be stupid if he didn't do this opt out. But look, there, like you said, it's gonna be similar to KD because of the loyalty thing. Look, he's a guy who bloomed late in his career, so the biggest paycheck is going to be this year. Like, this is going to be his most money.
Last one, too.
And it will be guaranteed.
Yeah.
So, look, I think that he has about I want to say about 70% chance of returning to Toronto after this year. I think the midseason discussion is going to be interesting because of this team and how they unroll. Because if they get on a roll, if they kill it in the regular season like they were last year,
and they're constantly second behind the Cavs,
they're going to keep him because anything can go in a best-of series. Yeah. They can go out there and just ball out.
But if maybe they're fourth in the East, and
if they're getting
they're
going to
be a playoff team,
I think they could even be number one in the East just because Cleveland might be on coast mode.
Yeah, there's a very good chance.
I think that could be something. But also, let's say Kyle Lowry gets injured. Do they plan on trading him if he's healthy near the trade deadline?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot out there.
I think that contract, that's the conversation that this will rev up all season is. Do we put him on trade watch middle of the season?
I think that's definitely out there just because they might not want to have what happened to KD and stuff like that. But yeah. One final thing that I do want to touch on the free agent market is look at that market and really what do you think is the big thing that could happen? Because obviously you got Steph out there. Do we honestly think?
Leaving.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you honestly think he's going to go?
Steph and KD seem to be like having. Well, in KD's words, I've been having more fun here than ever. Yeah, and this is how you really play basketball.
Yeah. The one thing, can I say one thing about the KD?
This is a podcast
before I get in. Is I was watching. I think it was
usually do, bud.
It was the one big thing that SVP does. I think it was last night. And I watched it this morning. I totally agree with him where it's like now we're taking this KD Russ stuff where it's like third graders like, oh, Dave, did you hear what Sean said about you, man?
Oh, I know. I love it.
Did you hear what he said about you?
I love it. Are you kidding me?
Or it's like KD will say like, oh, well, I haven't played on a team this selfish in forever. And then they'll be like, whoa, Russ, did you hear what he said? And then Russ
every comment is just a back and forth.
Can we cut it out and just play some basketball? Like, the one thing
they play each other right off the bat.
The one thing that SVP said, and it totally like hit me, was just because you work with someone doesn't mean you have to like them.
And one thing I did see too it was fun. I think it was some picture on Instagram. It was just like it was a picture of KD. He was like, I don't like playing with anyone that rhymes with Brussels. KD comes out and says, I don't like anyone that's name rhymes with Brussels. But yeah, I think the two main ones in KD and Steph are definitely going to probably stay with the Warriors. I'd be shocked. But the big one is probably Blake Griffin.
Well, I was going to say the big team that needs to make the decision is the Clippers.
Yeah. The Clippers got 3 guys.
Are you keeping? Well, with me, I was looking at Blake or CP3.
Well, and JJ.
And you got JJ.
And JJ
too.
So you got your core there that has been unable to produce.
And JJ is a guy that could be that piece that a team's missing to jump in. Because
every year teams try to throw money because he is a clutch as fuck 3-point shooter. He's coming off one of the best years.
Second best shooter in the league or probably third. He's top 3. And being behind guys like Steph and Clay, I mean, that's you can throw all the money in the world for him.
Can I ask you this? With the Clippers, we mentioned this conversation in our head coaches, but I'm going to take it a step in a different direction because we had a commenter bring up a fact that I completely forgot about. Doc Rivers isn't just the head coach. He also does the basketball operations with the Clippers.
He's also their Faja.
Well, yeah, that's why Austin Rivers still has a job.
Sooner or later, do we see the Clippers say, hey, you know what, you can still be the head coach, but we're getting someone else in here that can put a team together.
Move some pieces.
Because with Doc Rivers, I don't think that with him as the basketball operations guy, I think this offseason it becomes JJ is a huge question mark to me whether he'll return or not. But when it comes to CP3 and Blake, I think it's a choice. I think they're going to choose one, and I want to predict that they'll choose Blake Griffin, rightfully so, because he's and I say rightfully so only because he's younger than CP3. And it's one of those things like we mentioned in last week's podcast. They can have the two towers down low with DeAndre Jordan and
CP3,
Blake Griffin.
Floor general, given so much credit, but at the same time, it's like, at what point are you going to, quit making excuses for the guy not winning a championship?
Hell, I'll throw it out there. If they do want to try something else, I mean, Kyle Lowry will be a free agent. Oh. So if there are
trade or swap out aging point guards, pretty much.
Pretty much. I mean, I think Kyle Lowry is a little bit younger than Chris Paul, but I think they're near. Yeah, they're near tops. The same. They're definitely near the same range. But I mean, other guys that are out there, a guy that really intrigues me is Gordon Hayward. Because he's definitely going to decline his player option.
Yeah, he's going to go to Boston.
He's going to get. You got the Butler connection here, but still, I mean, it's most likely clear that he's going to opt out just because so he can take that money. And obviously, I mean, he'd be an idiot not to. So Gordon Hayward, if I'm your agent, I'm saying drop the Utah Jazz and at least see what's out there. Pull a Kyle Lowry here. But do you think Gordon Hayward can kind of change a franchise? Because he's kind of been built up to be a star, but we really don't see stars grow out of Utah.
You're right, and it's a low media market kind of town, so you don't hear a lot about him. Even
a low media market. Low.
You don't hear as much about him as you probably should. He's a fantastic young player, but I honestly think that there's zero chance he'll return to Utah. After
you think there's a zero chance?
I think zero.
Well, really, the only reason I would kind of agree with that is Utah's a low media market, but they're not the Oklahoma City Thunder, another low media market, but they're on the other side of the conference, meaning
and they
they're on the right
popularity.
Side. Yeah, and they're at the top of the conference.
Yeah. No, that's fair. No, I think Hayward's walking. He's going to get his paycheck from somebody else and make them a much better team. I don't think he's a franchise-changing player. I think he's very good, and because of Utah's lineup, he's been able to really thrive in the last couple of years and grow out his game. But no, I don't think he's going to be like that guy who's like, if we just get Gordon Hayward, like, championship lock.
Ricky threw out Boston. Do you think he would?
I think it's a great fit for Boston.
Do you think he would kind of make Boston give Boston that another edge where it's like, oh shit, they might be the second best team in the East?
Assuming Isaiah stays where he's at, talent wise or performance wise, not talent wise, performance wise. And you see a lot of good things out of your 14 deep bench.
And him and Horford too.
Well, and him and Brad Stevens, old coaches going back to college.
Yeah. Well, no, I meant more seeing from Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford what they can do this year.
Right.
So then would it make sense to bring in Gordon Hayward because you even have Jaylen Brown that might stun his growth?
Well, no, I think Jaylen Brown will be fine one way or the other. He's got a long way to go, but at the same time, we've seen just raw athleticism. He can take it to the hole on just about anybody. So. No, I think him to the Celtics is probably the most impactful move that he could make. And from a team standpoint, that would be the biggest gain.
The one free agent for next season that I think we're all going to be watching him this year is Derrick Rose. And it's not going to be just for how he's going to play this season, but also because I'm going to throw out there everything that's going on in his legal charges right now and in his legal trial. That could affect his season tenfold. So you have that. You have his play. Going off the play, if he has a contract year and he just balls up like he did the last time he had a contract year, is some team out there going to say, yeah, he's a 28-year-old point guard, but you know what? We're going to overpay for a guy with multiple knee surgeries who in 3 years is going to be on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, but at the same time, if he has the potential to spark off an offense and absolutely ball out like you said, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In today's NBA, you have to pay for guys on what they can do for you right now. Injuries happen. Yes, he has a bad history of it, but at the same time, he's still that guy who can he's got magic in a bottle sometimes.
You can't deny that. Do the Clippers look at him? Maybe go with Blake and then we see JJ and CP3 leave and they bring in D Rose?
That makes no sense to me. Why would you bring in a point guard who's aging and has multiple knee issues when you could just bring in Chris Paul who's better and doesn't have the knee problems?
I'm throwing it out there. Obviously,
and I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to
Doc Rivers, with his basketball operational skills. Can you see any
of these guys teaming up together though to form a new super team?
That was gonna be my final question here. Is what guy can either add to a team that's currently existing and make another super team and kind of add to that depth? Like, could a guy go and be with Russ and possibly make a super team there? Or can we see a super team here? Obviously, 1 and 2 already are on a super team with Steph and KD. But I think one thing that might be interesting is that I don't think there's a guy out there. I don't think there's guys out there that can be like, oh, let's team up and make a super team, because if there's any of those guys, it's like, well, Blake and CP3 already did it and didn't work out that much. I think it's more of you can put a guy on a different team and make it a super team. And I think that's something that we could possibly see. Who that is and what team it is, I'm not entirely sure, but obviously we haven't seen LA make any big moves, and I'm talking about the Lakers here. We haven't seen LA make any huge splashes, and a huge splash would, for them, I look at the restricted free agent, I look at number 6 here on Hoops Hype, it's Rudy Gobert. Imagine adding a guy like Rudy Gobert, a rim protector who's that young, who's not that great of a scorer, but you don't need him to be that great of a scorer because you do have Russell and you do have Ingram and you have all these great scorers guard-wise. I think Rudy Gobert, if you add him to a team like the Lakers, I think that makes the Lakers so fucking dangerous in the future. Oh,
it definitely would. I think that Gobert, because of his age, but also his just dominance down low that he could bring, and we're hoping that he lives up to the hype again and continues to grow his game. I don't think he's hit his top end yet, so I think he'd be an absolute stud and a great pickup for the Lakers. My guy I'm thinking about is Paul Millsap. Mm-hmm. I think quietly he has been just dominating. I think that's one of the things, like Atlanta's like, oh, well, we lost Horford, but we brought in Dwight. Well, we'll be fine because Dwight's here. Mm-hmm. You're giving no credit to Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap has been better and better and better, and dude is a stud. He's a perennial all-star. I think that he is a guy who can easily, any team who wants him, huge plus. Not trying to take this away from him, but he did spike when he's with Budenholzer. Do you think it's mainly because of the way that Atlanta runs their team? I mean, systems help. There's no denying. A guy has a fit to a system, but I think that he's a guy who should probably cash in again. Well, do you think he should cash in, or do you think he should go ring chasing? A la David West. How about he's got more value than David West. I know he does.
How about do a little bit of both, where let's go to a system where Budenholzer came from, where they're running the same system. Also, Paul Gasol might take a player option. They may need a power forward. The Spurs. Yeah, I can't argue. Like that fits like butter. Millsap to the Spurs. You have LaMarcus Aldridge and Millsap is your Kawhi. And I'm just guards. Just give them guards. Well, for the love of God. CP3 to the Spurs. Fine. Spurs super team. That? Spurs super team. CP3, Paul Millsap, LA, and Kawhi. Would that be the best super team out there? I mean, it's hard to beat Curry, Draymond, and they've Durant got they've got the shooters, but like all as around? As a team, like shit, that'd be crazy. So let's say that happens. CP3 and Paul Millsap, the weirdest combination in the world. Seriously, it's like, hey, dude, you want to go to San Antonio? Want to go to the big market of San Antonio and win some rings? Do you think that would happen though? And would that be the best super team in the NBA? That's the final question. I don't think it would, but I think it'd be entertaining as fuck because personality-wise, it'd be an interesting mix. CP3 outside of the limelight might be interesting. San Antonio is a little break from the media for him, so. He's a guy who's always like, it seems like we give him the free pass on a lot of things anyway, but no, I think that'd be great. I'd rather get them I'd just double guard backcourt in free agency. They need 2 guards. So maybe Kyle Lowry and Chris Paul, and that does make sense because they're both not scorers. But anyways. I got one to throw out there, and this is coming from a Twitter follower of ours. He mentioned us in a tweet earlier about 4 days ago, actually. What's his name? Give him Chris Hawkins. Got to give Chris Hawkins. Follow him on Twitter at ChrisUnited93. I'm not sure if the website is the most creditable, but I'm throwing out the idea just in case. It's the Parent Herald says the headline is DeMarcus Cousins and Russell Westbrook to Spurs. Trade happening in 2008 free agency. 2008? 18. So well, maybe that's 2 years from now. I know, but maybe they don't do it this year and they try to get Westbrook and Cousins. Ugh. Wow, that is some horrendous personalities to match up. Yeah, that's weird. That's bad personalities because Russ is obviously so alpha, and then you got Cousins who's a complete alpha, and then also but because they know each other, like we're the same personality, we can get along, and they can. Yeah, the rest of the locker room would literally hate that them. Sounds great. Just add Rajon Rondo. It'd be great. They also that also doesn't make sense to me in general because
LaMarcus Aldridge is great in the post and he can stretch out, but that's not really what LA does best, is stretch out. And obviously Cousins is best with his back to the basket, but he can obviously stretch out to 3, but also he's not the greatest at doing that. So I think that's a lot of. I think that's just putting names where names could be.
Yeah, I feel like it's just the DeMarcus Cousins yearly game of who's gonna get DeMarcus Cousins this year.
Still gonna be Boston.
Talk about the trades.
Is it more of a because we mentioned the Spurs? Do the Spurs try to set this free agency up for a possible Westbrook run? Maybe you don't get the point guard this year because we're going to shoot to try to get Westbrook next year.
I think Pop would stay away from that. I think Pop would be going to a guy like Chris Paul, who is more of a team-oriented player, because that's who San Antonio looks.
Fitting there.
And Paul Millsap's a guy who's team-oriented too. And all the players they've brought in consistently are guys who are team-oriented.
Guards, and they need it now.
I could see Kyle Lowry fitting there as well.
You've got 2 guys who right now are studs. One who is just in his prime, and Kawhi, who this is the time to strike. This is when Kawhi needs to get his championships. So I want them to get some guards. I want them to go for it in the next 2 years.